The crack of gunfire echoed across the plains as Anna Calloway urged her two-horse team faster, her heart hammering against her ribs with every jolt of the wagon. April 1876 was supposed to bring new beginnings in Colorado territory, not the nightmarish chase that had begun at dawn when three riders spotted her traveling alone across the open range. "Faster," she hissed, snapping the reins again. Her wedding band glinted in the morning sun, a cruel reminder of what she'd lost just 3 weeks prior. The telegram had been brief. Jacob Calloway, killed in a mining accident outside Denver, no body to bury, no husband to mourn properly. Just a widow at 22 with nothing but a wagon of possessions and a desperate plan to reach her sister in Willow Creek. The lead rider's voice carried over the rumble of hooves and wheels. "Pull over, miss. We just want to talk." Anna knew better. She'd heard stories about women traveling alone in these territories. Her gaze darted to the shotgun tucked beneath her seat, but she dared not reach for it while managing the reins. The terrain ahead sloped downward, giving her horses dangerous momentum as they thundered toward a shallow creek bed. The wagon hit a deep rut, lifting Anna several inches off her seat. She struggled to regain control as the vehicle lurched sickeningly sideways, the right wheel catching on a hidden boulder. The horses screamed in terror as the wagon tipped, then rolled completely. Anna felt herself thrown, the world spinning in a chaos of splintering wood, dust, and pain before darkness claimed her. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments, the taste of dirt, a throbbing in her temple, the sound of men's voices and hoofbeats rapidly approaching. Her fingers dug into the soil as she tried to move, but her body refused to cooperate. The wagon lay shattered several yards away, one horse still harnessed and frantically pulling against its restraints while the other lay motionless. "See what you done. Could have just stopped nice and easy." The voice belonged to a rail-thin man with a pockmarked face, dismounting from his horse 10 feet away. His two companions spread out, rifles ready. A new sound cut through her fog of pain, a single horse approaching at full gallop. The three men turned, startled by the unexpected arrival. "That's far enough, gentlemen." The deep voice carried with it a quiet authority that made Anna strain to see its source. A tall figure sat astride a chestnut stallion, silhouetted against the morning sun. His face was shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but she could make out broad shoulders and the unmistakable outline of a rifle pointed steadily at her pursuers. "This ain't your business, cowboy," the pockmarked man spat. "Just a little misunderstanding with the lady." "3 armed men chasing down a lone woman, that's everybody's business where I come from." The rider dismounted in one fluid motion, keeping his rifle trained on them. "Why don't you all just ride on out of here before this gets unpleasant?" The tense standoff stretched for several heartbeats. Anna could see the stranger better now, lean and weathered, with eyes the color of a winter sky. His posture suggested a man thoroughly comfortable with violence but not eager to engage in it. The leader of the 3 men weighed his options visibly before gesturing to his companions. "Ain't worth getting shot over." He remounted his horse, spitting toward the ground. "Probably ain't carrying nothing worth taking anyhow." "Smart decision," the stranger said, not lowering his rifle until the 3 had turned their horses and ridden back the way they'd come. Only when they were distant specks on the horizon did he finally approach Anna, kneeling beside her with genuine concern etched across his features. His face was handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw partially covered by a few days' growth of beard. "Madam, can you hear me? Are you hurt?" His gentle tone contradicted the hardness he'd shown moments ago. Yes," Anna managed, attempting to sit up. A wave of dizziness forced her back down. "My wagon, everything I own. Don't worry about that now." He carefully examined the cut on her forehead. "Name's Elijah Walker. I've got a ranch about 3 miles west of here. Let's get you patched up first, then we can salvage what we can from your wagon." Anna felt tears threatening. The shock of the accident, the pursuit, and this unexpected rescue overwhelmed her. "They've been following me since sunrise, I thought." "You're safe now," Elijah said firmly, his blue eyes meeting hers with a certainty that somehow steadied her racing heart. "You're not alone anymore." In that moment, despite the wreckage of her wagon and the uncertainty of her future, Anna felt something she hadn't experienced since receiving that terrible telegram hope. Elijah's gentle hands helped her to a sitting position. "Can you tell me your name, madam?" Anna Calloway. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears as she took stock of her injuries. Nothing seemed broken, though her entire body protested with various aches. "Mrs. Calloway, then." His eyes flickered to her wedding band. "Widow Calloway," she corrected, the words still strange on her tongue. 3 weeks now? Something shifted in his expression, recognition of her grief, perhaps, or memory of his own. "I'm sorry for your loss." He helped her stand, supporting her weight when her legs threatened to buckle. Anna became acutely aware of his nearness, the solid strength of his arm around her waist, steadying her. It had been weeks since anyone had touched her with such care. "My horse," she gasped, suddenly remembering. "One of them was the bay's gone, I'm afraid," Elijah said gently. "But the other seems sound, just frightened. We'll calm him down and see what can be salvaged from your wagon." The next hour passed in a blur as Elijah methodically recovered what he could from the wreckage. Her trunk had survived mostly intact, along with several smaller parcels. The wagon itself was beyond repair, one wheel completely shattered, the axle snapped clean through. "Where were you headed?" he asked as he secured her belongings to his horse and the remaining wagon horse. "Willow Creek. My sister lives there with her husband." Anna watched him work, impressed by his efficiency. "I sold our homestead in Kansas after Jacob. After I got word, there was nothing left for me there." Elijah nodded, his face thoughtful. "Willow Creek's another 2 days' ride. You can rest at my place until you're ready to continue on. I can take you there myself when you're recovered." "I couldn't impose, it's no imposition, Mrs. Calloway." His voice was firm but kind. "Those men might still be around, and you're in no condition to travel alone just yet." Anna wanted to protest, to insist on her independence, but practicality won out. She was injured, without transportation, and alone in dangerous territory. "Thank you, Mr. Walker, I'm in your debt." He helped her mount his stallion, then led both horses on foot. As they traveled west toward his ranch, Anna studied his back straight and strong, moving with the confident gait of a man at home in this harsh landscape. She had expected the West to be dangerous, but she hadn't anticipated finding kindness among its dangers. "How long have you been in Colorado territory?" she asked, partly to distract herself from the throbbing pain in her head. "Going on 8 years now," Elijah replied without turning. "Came out after the war with not much more than the clothes on my back and this horse. Built the ranch up from nothing. You fought in the war." Many of the men she knew in Kansas had served in the conflict that had torn the nation apart over a decade ago. "Yes, madam, Union cavalry." His voice took on a distant quality. "Seemed easier to start fresh out west than go back home to Tennessee afterward." Anna considered this. The war had ended 11 years ago, which would make Elijah somewhere in his 30s, she guessed. Old enough to have lived through considerable hardship, yet not so old that life had completely hardened him. "And you, Kansas, you said?" he asked after a while. "Yes, born and raised near Lawrence. Jacob and I married 4 years ago. He heard about silver strikes in Colorado, thought we could make our fortune." She swallowed hard. "I got word 3 weeks ago that there was a cave-in. They never recovered his body." Elijah was quiet for a moment. "The mines are hungry things. I'm sorry, Mrs. Calloway." They crested a gentle rise, and Anna gasped at the view that greeted her. Nestled in a verdant valley below was a modest but well-maintained ranch. A sturdy log cabin stood at its center, with a barn and several corrals surrounding it. A small herd of cattle grazed in a nearby pasture, and a stream wound through the property, catching the afternoon sunlight. "Welcome to the Clearwater Ranch," Elijah said, a note of pride in his voice. "It's not much, but it's home. It's beautiful," Anna replied honestly. After weeks of grief and uncertainty, the peaceful scene before her seemed almost unreal. As they approached the ranch, a young man emerged from the barn, lanky, with a shock of red hair visible beneath his hat. "Thomas," Elijah called out, "we have a guest, Mrs." Calloway had some trouble on the road. Prepare the spare room, would you? The young man nodded, eyes widening slightly at the sight of Anna's bruised face and torn dress. Yes, sir, right away. He hurried toward the cabin. Thomas Harper works for me, Elijah explained as he helped Anna dismount. Good kid, orphaned in Denver a few years back. He handles the horses and helps with the cattle. The interior of the cabin was surprisingly comfortable. Simple furnishings crafted from local timber gave the main room a warm, inviting feeling. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and bookshelves lined another, an unexpected sight that immediately raised her estimation of her host. Please, sit. Elijah gestured to a sturdy chair near the fire. Let me take a proper look at that cut. Anna touched her forehead gingerly, her fingers coming away with traces of dried blood. Elijah returned with a basin of water and clean cloths. May I? He asked, waiting for her nod before gently cleaning the wound. His touch was surprisingly delicate for hands so work-hardened. It's not as bad as it looked. Head wounds just tend to bleed something fierce. Their eyes met briefly, and Anna felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. She quickly attributed it to her physical distress and looked away. Thomas will bring your trunk to the spare room, Elijah continued, seemingly unaware of her momentary discomfort. There's a wash basin and fresh water there. We can have supper once you've had a chance to rest and freshen up. You're very kind, Mr. Walker. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Out here, kindness isn't just good manners, Mrs. Calloway. It's survival. The spare room was small but immaculately clean, with a narrow bed covered in a handmade quilt and a window overlooking the valley. Anna took advantage of the privacy to assess her injuries more thoroughly. Besides the cut on her forehead, she had bruises forming along her right side and a wrenched shoulder that protested every movement. Still, she had survived far worse than physical pain in recent weeks. She changed into a simple blue dress from her trunk, grateful that most of her belongings had survived the crash. After washing away the dirt and blood from her face, she tried to tame her long chestnut hair into some semblance of order. The woman who stared back from the small mirror looked tired and vulnerable, not at all the determined widow who had set out from Kansas with dreams of a new start. When she emerged, the aroma of cooking filled the cabin. Elijah stood at the stove, stirring something in a large pot while Thomas set the table. Mrs. Calloway, Thomas greeted her with a shy nod. Mr. Walker says you had trouble with road agents. They're becoming a real problem since the new silver strikes. I'm not sure what they wanted, Anna admitted, taking the seat Elijah pulled out for her. I don't have anything of value. A woman traveling alone is value enough for men like that, Elijah said darkly, placing a bowl of stew before her. Forgive my bluntness, but it's the truth. You're fortunate I was out checking fence lines this morning. The stew was surprisingly good venison with wild onions and potatoes. Anna realized she hadn't eaten since dawn and had to remind herself not to devour it too quickly. This is delicious, she said. I didn't expect a bachelor's kitchen to produce such fare. Elijah's eyes crinkled at the corners. My mother would roll in her grave if I couldn't feed myself properly. She made sure all her boys could cook before we left home. You have brothers, a shadow crossed his face. Had two. Both gone now. Samuel at Shiloh and James to typhoid in '68. I'm sorry, Anna said softly, understanding all too well the grief that lurked beneath his matter-of-fact tone. The conversation flowed more easily after that, with Thomas occasionally chiming in with questions about Kansas. Anna found herself relaxing despite her circumstances, the simple meal and company a balm to her fractured spirits. As darkness fell, Thomas excused himself to check on the horses one last time before retiring to his quarters above the barn. Left alone with Elijah, Anna felt a curious tension settle over the room. I truly appreciate your hospitality, Mr. Walker, she said. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along when you did. Elijah's expression grew serious. Mrs. Calloway, Anna, if I may, the journey to Willow Creek isn't one to undertake lightly, especially now. Those men could still be in the area. I need to reach my sister, she insisted. She's expecting me and she's the only family I have left, he nodded slowly. I understand. But you need time to heal and we need to arrange proper transportation for you. I propose you stay here for at least a week. By then, I can have business in Willow Creek myself and escort you there safely. The offer was logical and generous, yet Anna hesitated. She barely knew this man, regardless of his kindness. Still, what choice did she have? A week, she agreed finally. And I insist on helping around the ranch to earn my keep. The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. Fair enough. Though I should warn you, Thomas is very protective of his domain in the barn. I'm an excellent cook, Anna countered, and I can mend clothing well enough to put any seamstress to shame. Then we have a deal. Elijah extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Anna took it. His grip was warm and firm, calloused from years of ranch work. Now get some rest, Mrs. Calloway. Morning comes early out here. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Anna listened to the sounds of the ranch settling around her, the occasional lowing of cattle, the distant howl of a coyote, the creak of the cabin's timbers cooling in the night air. For the first time in weeks, she didn't immediately reach for Jacob's memory as sleep approached. Instead, her mind lingered on sky-blue eyes and the quiet strength of the man who had promised she wasn't alone anymore. Dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of gold and pink as Anna emerged from the cabin. She had slept better than expected, though her body reminded her of yesterday's ordeal with every movement. The ranch was already awake around her, Thomas leading horses to the corral, chickens pecking in the yard, and the smell of coffee wafting from the open kitchen window. Elijah stood by the corral, his back to her, deep in conversation with Thomas. The morning light caught in his dark blonde hair, showing threads of silver at the temples that she hadn't noticed before. He wore simple clothing, a faded blue shirt, worn denim pants, and the well-used boots of a working rancher, yet he carried himself with a natural dignity that transcended his frontier surroundings. He turned as if sensing her presence, and his expression warmed. Mrs. Calloway. How are you feeling this morning? Sore, she admitted, but better, thank you. Thomas is heading into town for supplies. Is there anything you need? Anna considered. Perhaps some thread if he can find it. I noticed your shirt could use mending. A faint smile touched his lips. Already putting yourself to work, I see. I meant what I said about earning my keep. Thomas departed shortly after breakfast, and Anna insisted on taking over the kitchen duties. As she washed the breakfast dishes, she watched through the window as Elijah worked with a young colt in the corral, his movements patient and assured. There was something hypnotic about the way man and animal communicated, a dance of mutual respect that spoke volumes about Elijah's character. Over the next several days, a routine developed. Anna took charge of the domestic affairs of the ranch house, finding unexpected satisfaction in bringing order to the bachelor household. She discovered that while the cabin was reasonably well maintained, it lacked the small touches that transformed a shelter into a home. She arranged wildflowers in a tin can on the table, reorganized the kitchen for efficiency, and mended a stack of shirts and pants that had clearly been awaiting attention for some time. For his part, Elijah respected her need for purpose, neither questioning her methods nor restricting her movements around the property. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes reading from his surprisingly extensive library. Anna learned that he had been educated in Tennessee before the war, the second son of a moderately prosperous farmer who had expected him to pursue law or medicine. The war changed everything, he explained on the third night, staring into the flames. Coming home to Tennessee as a Union soldier wasn't an option, even if the farm hadn't been destroyed, so I headed west, like thousands of others looking to start over. Do you regret it? Anna asked, genuinely curious. Choosing this life instead of the one planned for you. Elijah considered this, his face thoughtful in the firelight. No, he said finally. There's a freedom here that I never would have found back east. The work is hard, but it's honest. No one cares who your father was or which side you fought for, only whether you keep your word and pull your weight. I understand that appeal, Anna said softly. In Kansas, after Jacob died, all anyone saw was the poor widow Calloway. Their pity was suffocating. And your sister in Willow Creek, will it be different there? Margaret has always respected my independence. Her husband owns the general store, and they've offered me a position there. Anna traced the pattern on her teacup with one finger. It's not the life I imagined, but then few of us end up where we expect. Elijah's eyes met hers across the small space between them. What did you imagine, if I may ask? The question caught her off guard with its directness. Children, she admitted after a moment. A home of my own. Simple things, really. The simplest dreams are often the most profound, he said quietly. Something in his tone made her look up sharply, but his expression revealed nothing beyond polite interest. Still, Anna felt a curious warmth spread through her chest, a sensation she quickly attributed to the fire and the tea on the 5th day while Elijah and Thomas were out with the cattle. Anna discovered a small garden plot behind the cabin, overgrown but still showing signs of deliberate planting. She spent the afternoon clearing weeds and turning soil, finding unexpected solace in the physical labor and connection to the earth. She was so absorbed in her task that she didn't hear Elijah approach until his shadow fell across the freshly turned soil. I've been meaning to get to that, he said, removing his hat. It was my project 2 summers ago, but the cattle keep me too busy to maintain it properly. Anna sat back on her heels, wiping perspiration from her brow. It's good soil. With some care, you could grow plenty here: potatoes, carrots, beans, maybe even tomatoes if you protect them from early frost. Elijah looked at her curiously. You sound like you've done this before. I grew up on a farm, she explained, returning to her weeding. My father believed every child should know how to coax food from the earth. It was his form of security no matter what else happened. We would never go hungry if we understood the land. A wise man. Elijah crouched beside her, examining the neat rows she had created. What else did he teach you? To read the weather in the sky, to respect animals as partners, not possessions, to never waste what the land provides. She smiled at the memories. And to always keep a shotgun loaded but out of sight when strangers come calling. Elijah laughed, a rich, genuine sound that Anna realized she hadn't heard before. It transformed his face, erasing years of care and revealing glimpses of the young man he must have been before the war. Your father and mine would have gotten along famously, he said. Though mine would have kept the shotgun in plain sight as a warning. They worked side by side until sunset, preparing the small plot for future planting. It was simple labor, but Anna found herself enjoying the companionable silence that developed between them, broken only by occasional questions or observations. As they walked back to the cabin in the gathering dusk, Elijah paused, gazing westward where the last rays of sunlight painted the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold. Beautiful, isn't it? He said quietly. No matter how many times I see it, that view never gets old. Anna followed his gaze, struck by the vastness of the landscape. It makes one feel very small. Yes, but not in a diminishing way. His voice took on a thoughtful quality. More like a reminder that our troubles, however large they seem, are just small parts of something much greater. She glanced at him, surprised by the philosophical turn. You sound like a poet, Mr. Walker, not a rancher. A faint smile touched his lips. Can't a man be both? His eyes met hers, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits despite their different paths. The moment was broken by Thomas calling from the barn, announcing that supper was ready. As they walked toward the cabin, Anna was acutely aware of Elijah beside her, his presence somehow both comforting and unsettling. That night, she lay awake longer than usual, her thoughts churning. In less than a week, she had settled into life at Clearwater Ranch with an ease that both pleased and troubled her. The widow Calloway should still be deep in mourning, not finding contentment in a stranger's home, not noticing the way sunlight caught in a man's hair or appreciating the timbre of his laugh. Yet when she tried to summon Jacob's face, she found the details growing hazy, the exact shade of his brown eyes, the particular pattern of freckles across his nose. The realization brought a fresh wave of guilt, but beneath it lay a more troubling emotion: relief. Relief that the sharp edges of grief were already beginning to soften, that life continued to pull her forward despite her losses. The sixth day dawned with dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Elijah studied the sky during breakfast, his expression concerned. "Storm's coming," he announced. "A big one by the look of those clouds. Thomas, we'd better secure everything in the barn and bring the closer herds into the north pasture." "What can I do?" Anna asked, already clearing the breakfast dishes. "Check the cabin for any loose shutters or doors. Make sure we have plenty of lamp oil and water brought in. Once this hits, we might be confined indoors for a day or more." The air grew heavy as morning progressed, charged with the promise of violence. Anna worked methodically, securing the cabin and gathering supplies as directed. By midday, the wind had risen significantly, driving dust and leaves before it. Distant thunder rumbled across the plains, and the temperature dropped noticeably. Elijah and Thomas returned from the pastures just as the first fat raindrops began to fall. They had barely secured the barn doors when the storm broke in earnest sheets of rain driven sideways by howling wind, punctuated by brilliant flashes of lightning and deafening thunder. "Made it just in time," Elijah said as they gathered in the cabin's main room, water streaming from their oilskin coats. "This is going to be a bad one." The storm's fury increased as afternoon gave way to an unnaturally dark evening. Wind shrieked around the cabin's corners, finding every crack and crevice to whistle through. Rain pounded the roof like thousands of tiny hammers, occasionally accompanied by the sharp rattle of hail. Thomas stoked the fire higher against the growing chill, while Anna prepared a simple supper from their provisions. The familiar tasks helped distract her from the storm's intensity, though she couldn't help flinching at particularly loud thunderclaps. Not fond of storms. Elijah asked, noticing her reaction. "They make me uneasy," she admitted. "When I was 8, lightning struck our barn during a storm like this. The fire took everything: our harvest, 2 horses, all my father's tools. We nearly lost the house as well." "Nature reminds us of our place now and then," he said. "Humbling but necessary, I suppose." A tremendous crash from outside made them all jump. Thomas hurried to the window, peering through the rain-streaked glass. "The old oak by the corral," he exclaimed. "Lightning must have hit it." "It's down across the fence," Elijah cursed under his breath. "The horses, they're secure in the barn," Thomas assured him, "but that section of fence will need rebuilding once this passes." The storm raged well into the night. Thomas eventually retired to his small room off the kitchen, but Anna found herself too restless for sleep. She sat by the fire, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, listening to the tempest outside and the occasional creak of the cabin's timbers straining against the wind. Elijah joined her after checking that all was secure, pouring 2 small measures of whiskey from a bottle kept high on a shelf. "For medicinal purposes," he said with a hint of amusement, offering her one. "Helps chase away storm fears." Anna hesitated only briefly before accepting. The liquor burned pleasantly down her throat, spreading warmth through her chest. "Thank you." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the fires dance while the storm continued its assault outside. Anna was struck by how comfortable she felt in this moment, sheltered from the elements, sharing quiet companionship with a man who had been a stranger just days ago. "I never properly thanked you," she said suddenly. "For saving me that day, those men might have—" She couldn't finish the thought. "No thanks needed," Elijah replied, his voice low. "Any decent man would have done the same." "Perhaps, but decent men seem in short supply these days." She studied his profile in the firelight, the strong jaw, the thoughtful eyes, the lines etched by sun and experience. "How is it that you never married, Mr. Walker, if you don't mind my asking?" The question clearly surprised him. He took another sip of whiskey before answering. "There was someone once, back in Tennessee before the war, Elizabeth Hargrove." His voice softened on the name. "We had plans." "What happened?" Her brother was my best friend. He died at Chickamauga fighting for the Confederacy while I wore Union blue. Elijah's eyes remained fixed on the fire. When I wrote to her afterward, her reply was final. She couldn't reconcile loving the man she saw as responsible for her brother's death, even indirectly. "I'm sorry," Anna said softly. He shrugged, though the gesture couldn't disguise the old pain behind it. War divided more than just the country. By the time I made it out west, it seemed easier to pour my energy into building something lasting rather than risk that kind of loss again. Anna understood that sentiment all too well. The pain of losing Jacob had made the idea of ever opening her heart again seem impossible. Yet sitting here, she could feel something shifting within her tiny fissures in the walls she had built around her grief. A particularly violent gust of wind rattled the cabin, making the lamplight flicker. Anna instinctively moved closer to Elijah, then felt self-conscious about the gesture. "Storm's getting worse," she said, attempting to cover her momentary vulnerability. "It'll pass by morning," he assured her, though he made no move to increase the distance between them. "They always do." Their eyes met, and Anna felt a curious tightening in her chest. For one breathless moment, she thought he might reach for her hand. Instead, he cleared his throat and stood. "You should try to get some sleep, Mrs. Calloway. Tomorrow will be a long day of repairs after this weather." The formal address a step back from the intimacy they had been approaching wasn't lost on Anna. "Of course. Good night, Mr. Walker." Alone in her room, listening to the storm's continued assault, Anna pressed her fingers to her wedding band. For the first time since receiving news of Jacob's death, she slipped it off, holding the simple gold circle in her palm. It felt both heavier and lighter than she remembered. "I'm trying to honor you," she whispered to the memory of her husband, "but I don't know if I'm doing it right." No answer came except the howl of the wind and the steady drumming of rain, nature's reminder that life continued its relentless forward motion, regardless of human grief or confusion. Morning revealed the storm's toll, broken branches scattered across the yard, the massive oak split nearly in half where lightning had struck it, sections of fencing flattened, and one corner of the barn roof partially torn away. The rain had stopped, though dark clouds still threatened on the horizon. "Could have been worse," Elijah observed as they surveyed the damage. "At least all the animals are accounted for." The day passed in a flurry of activity as they worked to repair the most critical damage. Anna insisted on helping, her sleeves rolled up as she cleared debris and held boards steady while Elijah and Thomas hammered them into place. By sunset, the essential repairs were complete, though much work remained. "You're stronger than you look, Mrs. Calloway," Thomas remarked as they finished the last of the fence mending. "Most city women would have stayed inside, afraid of getting their hands dirty." "I'm not most women," Anna replied with a small smile, "and I was never much for sitting idle while others work." That evening, exhausted but satisfied with their progress, they shared a simple meal. Thomas excused himself early, leaving Anna and Elijah alone by the fire once more. The previous night's intimate conversation hung between them, acknowledged but not referenced directly. "I should reach Willow Creek tomorrow," Elijah said after a comfortable silence. "I can inquire about transportation for you while I'm there, perhaps find a wagon you could purchase." Anna nodded, surprised by the pang of disappointment she felt at the reminder of her imminent departure. "Yes, that would be helpful, thank you. Thomas can accompany you when you're ready to leave," he continued, his tone carefully neutral. "He knows the trail well and you'd be safer with company." "You won't be available?" The question slipped out before she could consider its implications. Elijah's eyes met hers briefly before returning to the fire. "I have business that will take me north for a few days. Cattle business." Understanding dawned slowly. He was creating distance between them, a gentle but deliberate separation. The realization stung more than Anna would have expected. "I see," she kept her voice even with effort. "Well, I've imposed on your hospitality long enough. I'm sure Thomas will be an excellent guide." Elijah seemed about to say something more, but instead nodded and rose from his chair. "Good night, Mrs. Calloway." After he had gone, Anna remained by the fire, trying to make sense of her conflicted emotions. She had come to Colorado as a widow seeking refuge with family, not looking for whatever this unsettling awareness of Elijah Walker represented. It was too soon, too unexpected, too complicated. Yet as she finally retired to her room, she couldn't ignore the hollow feeling in her chest, the sense that something precious was slipping away before it had even been properly acknowledged. Morning came with clear skies and a cool breeze, perfect weather for traveling. Anna dressed with extra care, selecting her best remaining dress for the journey to town. As she pinned her hair, she noticed that her wedding band still lay on the small table where she had placed it during the storm. After a moment's hesitation, she slipped it into her pocket rather than back onto her finger. Elijah was already saddled and ready when she emerged from the cabin. He wore a clean shirt and his best vest, his usually unruly hair tamed somewhat for the visit to town. "I should be back by nightfall," he told her, checking his saddlebags one last time. "Is there anything specific you need from Willow Creek?" "Just information about my sister, if you can manage it," Anna replied. "Margaret and Edward Hughes, they run the general store." "Hughes' store?" Elijah nodded in recognition. "I know it. Good people from what I've heard." An awkward silence fell between them, filled with unspoken words. Anna struggled to find the right thing to say, something that would bridge the careful distance he had established without overstepping boundaries. "Elijah," she began, the use of his first name deliberate. "I want you to know how grateful I am, not just for the rescue, but for everything since. Your kindness has meant more than I can properly express." His expression softened, and for a moment the careful mask slipped. "Anna." He paused, seeming to wrestle with himself before continuing more formally. "Mrs. Calloway, it's been a privilege having you here. You've brought life back to this place." Before she could respond, he mounted his horse in one fluid motion. With a tip of his hat that could have meant anything or nothing, he turned and rode toward the trail that would take him to Willow Creek. Anna watched until he disappeared over the rise, an inexplicable sense of loss washing over her. She had known him for only a week, yet somehow the prospect of leaving Clearwater Ranch felt increasingly like abandoning something vital. The day stretched endlessly before her. Anna threw herself into chores with unusual vigor, helping Thomas repair the remaining storm damage and preparing a stew for the evening meal. The physical labor helped distract her from the confusion of her thoughts, but as afternoon waned with no sign of Elijah's return, her anxiety grew. "He's probably just stayed for supper in town," Thomas assured her as they watched the trail from the porch. "Or maybe stopped to help someone along the way. Mr. Walkers like that can't pass by folks in trouble." "Of course," Anna agreed, though the knot in her stomach didn't ease. "I'm sure that's it." Darkness fell, and still Elijah did not return. They ate without him, the meal quieter than usual without his steady presence. As the clock neared 10, Thomas finally voiced what they were both thinking. "Something's wrong, Mr. Walker wouldn't stay in town this late without sending word." Anna nodded, her mind racing through increasingly alarming possibilities. Could he have been delayed by another storm, or perhaps his horse went lame? Possible, Thomas conceded, but not likely. "Storm is gone in these parts, and that stallion of his is the soundest horse I've ever known." "Then what?" Anna began, but was interrupted by the distant sound of hoofbeats approaching at speed. They hurried outside, lantern held high. The rider who emerged from the darkness, however, wasn't Elijah but a stranger, a young man on a lathered horse, his expression urgent. "Thomas Harper," he called, reining in his mount. "From Clearwater Ranch." "That's me," Thomas confirmed, stepping forward. "What's happened?" "Name's Wesley from the Hughes store in Willow Creek," the rider explained, dismounting quickly. "Mr. Walker asked me to come. There's been trouble." Anna's heart seemed to stop. "What kind of trouble? Is he hurt?" Wesley's eyes flicked to her, then back to Thomas. "Those road agents that have been causing problems. They shot up the town this afternoon. Mr. Walker got caught in the crossfire trying to help the sheriff." "Is he?" Anna couldn't finish the question. "He's alive," Wesley assured her quickly. "Took a bullet in the shoulder, another grazed his side. Doc Peterson's tending to him now at the Hughes place. Said he'll recover with proper care." Relief washed over Anna, followed immediately by renewed concern. "We need to go to him." Thomas nodded, already turning toward the barn. "I'll hitch the wagon. We can be there by morning if we leave now." "Mr. Walker was mighty insistent that I bring you both back," Wesley added. "Especially you, madam, kept saying something about promising you weren't alone anymore." The words struck Anna like a physical blow. Even injured and in pain, Elijah had remembered his promise to her. They traveled through the night, Thomas driving the wagon with Wesley riding alongside. Anna sat wrapped in blankets against the chill, her mind filled with memories of the past week. Elijah's quiet strength, his unexpected gentleness, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The thought that she might have lost him before truly knowing him was unbearable. Dawn was breaking as they reached Willow Creek, a bustling town compared to what Anna had expected, with several streets of wooden buildings, including a proper church and schoolhouse. Wesley led them directly to a two-story structure with Hughes General Store painted across its facade. A sign in the window announced it was closed due to emergency. The door opened before they could knock, revealing a woman in her 30s with Anna's same chestnut hair and green eyes, though with more lines of experience etched around them. "Anna." Margaret Hughes exclaimed, pulling her sister into a fierce embrace. "Thank God you're safe. When Mr. Walker arrived yesterday asking after you, we feared the worst." "Margaret," Anna returned the embrace, momentarily overwhelmed by the reunion. "I'm fine, truly. How is he, Mr. Walker?" Margaret's expression grew serious. "Resting now. The doctor says he was fortunate the shoulder wound missed anything vital and the side is just a deep graze, but he lost blood and there's risk of fever. Can I see him?" Her sister nodded, leading her through the store to a staircase at the back. "We put him in the spare room upstairs. Edward's with him now." The spare room was small but comfortable, with sunlight streaming through lace curtains. Elijah lay on the bed, his upper body heavily bandaged, his face pale against the white pillows. A middle-aged man, Edward Hughes, Anna presumed sat in a chair beside him, rising when they entered. "Anna," he greeted her warmly. "Margaret's told me so much about you." "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." "What happened exactly?" she asked, her eyes fixed on Elijah's still form. Edward's expression darkened. "Those 3 road agents you encountered, they've been terrorizing the area for months. Yesterday they rode into town bold as brass, tried to rob the bank. Sheriff Daniels confronted them and a gunfight broke out. Mr. Walker happened to be in the bank at the time, depositing some cattle money. When the sheriff went down, Walker picked up his shotgun and drove them off, but not before taking 2 bullets himself. He saved a lot of lives," Margaret added softly. "The whole town's talking about it." Anna moved to the bedside, noting with concern the feverish flush beginning to color Elijah's cheeks. "Has he been conscious, in and out?" Edward replied. "When he is awake, he asks about you, seems mighty concerned for someone he's only known a week." There was a question in her brother-in-law's tone that Anna chose to ignore. "I'll sit with him now, if you don't mind." Margaret and Edward exchanged a look before nodding. "Of course, call if you need anything." Alone with Elijah, Anna gently took his hand, alarmed at the heat radiating from his skin. "Elijah, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered, then opened slowly, revealing fever-bright blue eyes that took a moment to focus on her face. "Anna," his voice was rough with pain, "you came." "Of course I came," she replied, squeezing his hand. "You kept your promise to me, now I'm keeping mine to you." Confusion crossed his features. "What promise?" "That you're not alone anymore." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something deeper that made Anna's heart race. He attempted to sit up, then grimaced in pain. "Don't move," she ordered gently. "You've been shot, you stubborn man. What were you thinking, confronting armed robbers?" A ghost of his usual smile touched his lips. "Wasn't thinking, just acting. Seems to be my pattern where trouble's concerned." His gaze sharpened despite the fever. "Your sister, you found her. You can stay in town now as you planned." Anna hesitated, suddenly uncertain. The neat future she had envisioned in Willow Creek no longer seemed so clear or desirable. "Let's not worry about that now. You need to rest and heal." "Anna," he squeezed her hand weakly. "There's something I need to say in case don't," she interrupted firmly. "There's no in case. You're going to recover fully, Elijah Walker, even if I have to nurse you back to health myself." A weary smile touched his lips before his eyes drifted closed again. "Stubborn woman," he murmured as sleep reclaimed him. Anna remained by his side as morning gave way to afternoon, bathing his forehead with cool cloths as the fever rose. "Doctor." Peterson returned to check his wounds, his expression grave but not hopeless. "The next 24 hours will tell," he explained to Anna. "If the fever breaks without infection setting in, he should recover. He's strong and healthy otherwise, which helps his chances considerably." Margaret brought food that Anna barely touched, too focused on monitoring Elijah's labored breathing and feverish murmurs. As evening approached, his condition worsened, the fever climbing higher, his sleep growing more restless as he called out names Anna didn't recognize, reliving battles long past. "Samuel, get down," he shouted once, trying to rise from the bed before Anna gently restrained him. "They're flanking us." "SHH Elijah," she soothed, pressing a cool cloth to his burning forehead. "You're safe, the war is over." His eyes opened, unfocused and distant. "Elizabeth," the name struck Anna like a physical blow, the woman from Tennessee, his lost love. "No, it's Anna," she corrected softly. "Anna Calloway." Recognition slowly dawned in his fever-bright eyes. "Anna," he repeated, "from the wagon I found you." "Yes," she confirmed, relief washing through her. "You found me." "Beautiful," he murmured, his hand weakly reaching for hers. "Should have told you, too soon I know, but beautiful." Tears pricked at Anna's eyes as his words penetrated simple, feverish admissions that revealed more than perhaps he intended. "Rest now," she whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to his knuckles. "I'll be here when you wake." Through the long night, Anna maintained her vigil, dozing occasionally in the chair beside his bed but never leaving his side. Near dawn, his fever finally broke the crisis, passing as suddenly as it had arrived. Anna woke from a brief sleep to find Elijah watching her, his eyes clear for the first time since she'd arrived. "You stayed," he said simply. "I told you I would." She reached for the water glass on the bedside table, helping him drink. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been trampled by cattle," he admitted with a weak smile, "but alive thanks to you." "Thanks to Dr. Peterson and your own stubbornness," Anna corrected. "I just kept you company." Elijah's expression grew serious. "Anna, did I say anything while I was feverish?" "I have vague memories, but can't be sure what was real and what was dream." Heat rose to her cheeks as she remembered his delirious confessions. "Nothing of consequence," she replied, unable to meet his eyes directly. "Just fever talk." He studied her face for a long moment, as if searching for something. Whatever he saw there seemed to satisfy him, for he nodded slightly and relaxed back against the pillows. "Your sister and her husband have been very kind," he said, changing the subject. "This town is fortunate to have them." "Yes, they're good people." Anna arranged his blankets, needing something to do with her hands. "The whole town speaks highly of you too, after what you did at the bank. You're quite the hero, Mr. Walker." "Hardly," he scoffed. "I just did what needed doing." "That seems to be your way," she observed softly. "Doing what needs doing, regardless of the personal cost." Their eyes met, and for a moment the room seemed charged with unspoken words. The moment was broken by Margaret's entrance with a breakfast tray. "You're awake," she exclaimed, seeing Elijah alert, "and looking much improved. Anna hasn't left your side for more than 10 minutes since she arrived." Anna shot her sister a warning look, which Margaret pointedly ignored. "I'm grateful for her care," Elijah replied, his eyes still on Anna. "More than I can properly express." The next several days passed in a blur of activity. As Elijah's condition improved, he was moved to a larger room in the Hughes home above the store. Anna divided her time between helping in the store, becoming acquainted with what would have been her new position, and tending to Elijah as he regained his strength. News arrived that 2 of the road agents had been captured in a neighboring town, though the leader, the pockmarked man who had pursued Anna, remained at large. The entire territory seemed safer with the gang effectively disbanded, though Sheriff Daniels, recovering from his own wounds, warned that vigilance was still necessary. Through it all, Anna found herself increasingly torn. Her original plan to settle in Willow Creek with her sister made practical sense, yet she couldn't ignore the pull she felt toward Clearwater Ranch and its owner. During their daily conversations as Elijah recovered, she discovered layers to him that only deepened her admiration: his knowledge of literature, his dry humor, his thoughtful perspectives on everything from politics to ranching. A week after the shooting, Dr. Peterson declared Elijah fit to return home, though he strictly limited physical activity for at least another fortnight. Thomas had been managing the ranch in his absence, with occasional help from neighboring ranchers who respected Elijah enough to lend a hand. The evening before his planned departure, Anna found Elijah on the Hughes' back porch, watching the sunset. He stood straighter now, though he still favored his injured side. "Thomas has the wagon ready for morning," she informed him, joining him at the railing. "Are you certain you're strong enough for the journey?" "I've endured worse," he replied with a small smile. "And I miss my own bed," Anna nodded, understanding the desire to return to familiar surroundings. "Margaret and Edward have invited me to stay with them while I get settled in town." "Edward says I can start working in the store whenever I'm ready." Elijah's expression remained carefully neutral. "It's a good opportunity. Willow Creek is growing fast. They'll need the help." "Yes," Anna agreed, though the word felt hollow. A silence stretched between them, weighted with things unsaid. "Anna," Elijah finally broke the silence, turning to face her fully, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly without concern for my feelings." Her heart quickened. "Of course." "These past 2 weeks," he began, then stopped, seeming to search for the right words. "I find myself reluctant to return to Clearwater without you. I tell myself it's too soon, that you're still grieving, that I have no right to ask anything of you, and yet. She prompted when he hesitated. His blue eyes met hers directly. "When I was lying in that bed, uncertain if I would see another dawn, it wasn't my ranch or my cattle that filled my thoughts. It was you, your smile, your courage, the way you brought life back to places in my heart I thought had died years ago." Anna's breath caught in her throat. "Elijah, please let me finish before my courage fails," he interrupted gently. "I'm not asking for promises or declarations. I'm asking only if there might be possibility. If given time and patience, you might consider a future that includes me as more than just the man who pulled you from a wagon wreck." The simple honesty of his question moved her deeply. Anna thought of Jacob, the good man she had loved and lost, and realized with sudden clarity that honoring his memory didn't require denying the future that now stood before her. "When you found me that day," she began slowly, "I was running from more than just those men. I was running from grief, from loneliness, from the terrifying emptiness of a future I hadn't planned. And then you said those words, 'You're not alone anymore,' and something shifted, not immediately but gradually, day by day." She reached for his hand, taking it between both of hers. "I can't promise that I'm ready for everything a future together might mean, but I can promise that I want to discover that future, whatever form it takes, with you, Elijah Walker." The transformation of his expression from guarded hope to pure joy was like watching the sun emerge from behind clouds. Without words, he drew her gently into his arms, mindful of his healing wounds, and pressed his forehead to hers in a gesture of such tender intimacy that it brought tears to Anna's eyes. "I should warn you," she whispered, "that I've become quite attached to your garden and your library." A low chuckle rumbled through his chest. "Is that so? Well, Mrs. Calloway, I believe both could benefit greatly from your continued attention. And what about their owner?" His eyes, so close to hers, darkened with emotion. "Their owner has already benefited beyond measure from your attention." The kiss that followed was gentle yet profound, a promise, a beginning, a declaration without words that sealed the understanding between them. Later that evening, Anna sat with Margaret in the kitchen, explaining her decision to return to Clearwater Ranch with Elijah rather than remain in Willow Creek as planned. "I know it seems sudden," she concluded, bracing for her older sister's disapproval. "And perhaps it is. But these past weeks have shown me that life doesn't always follow the paths we expect. To her surprise, Margaret was smiling. Do you think I haven't seen the way you look at each other? Or the way he called for you in his fever? Some things don't need months or years to become clear, Anna. Sometimes you just know. You're not disappointed. About the store position, Margaret squeezed her hand. I wanted you near because I thought you needed family after losing Jacob, but you found someone else who makes you feel whole again. How could I possibly be disappointed in that? I do love you, Anna said, embracing her sister tightly, and we'll visit often. Clearwater isn't so very far. You'd better, Margaret warned with mock severity. And you tell that rancher of yours that I expect to be properly asked for my sister's hand when the time comes, even if I already know my answer. The following morning dawned clear and bright, perfect traveling weather. Thomas had the wagon loaded and ready by 8, with Elijah's stallion tethered behind. The entire Hughes family gathered to see them off, along with several townspeople who had come to thank Elijah for his actions during the bank robbery. As they prepared to depart, Sheriff Daniels approached, his arm still in a sling from his own injury. Walker, he greeted Elijah with a firm handshake. Wanted to let you know before you left we got him, the leader of that gang that's been terrorizing the territory. Anna felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The man with the pockmarked face, the sheriff nodded. That's him. James Scarface Wilson. Caught him trying to rob a stagecoach near Fort Collins. He won't be troubling honest folks again for a very long time. That's welcome news, Elijah said, his hand resting protectively at the small of Anna's back. Thank you, Sheriff. With final embraces and promises to return soon, Anna climbed into the wagon beside Elijah, who insisted on driving despite his injuries. As they pulled away from Willow Creek, she felt a curious mixture of emotions, the bittersweetness of leaving her sister after such a brief reunion, yet overwhelming anticipation for what lay ahead. Second thoughts? Elijah asked quietly, noting her reflective expression. Anna smiled, shaking her head. No, just grateful, for wagon wrecks and storms and even bank robberies, for all the unexpected turns that somehow led us here. He returned her smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way she had come to love. A rather unconventional path to happiness, I'll grant you. I wouldn't have it any other way, she replied, her hand finding his between them. After all, the most interesting journeys rarely follow the expected trail. The journey back to Clearwater Ranch took most of the day, with frequent stops to allow Elijah to rest. The landscape seemed different to Anna now, no longer the threatening wilderness it had appeared when she first crossed it, but a land of beauty and possibility. Each landmark they passed held memories of her first journey with Elijah, the creek where her wagon had overturned, the ridge where she'd first glimpsed the ranch, the valley that had become unexpectedly precious to her. As they crested the final rise and Clearwater Ranch came into view, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, Anna felt a surge of emotion she hadn't anticipated, the profound sense of coming home. Welcome back, Elijah said softly, following her gaze to the ranch below. It's good to be home, she replied, the words feeling right on her tongue, his hand tightened around hers, his eyes reflecting the same wonder she felt at how quickly life could change, how unexpectedly joy could emerge from tragedy. As they descended toward the ranch, Anna knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, no longer alone, but partners in the adventure of building a shared future from the wreckage of the past. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning with golden leaves drifting across the yard, Anna Calloway became Anna Walker in a simple ceremony at Clearwater Ranch. Margaret and Edward Hughes made the journey from Willow Creek, along with Dr. Peterson, Sheriff Daniels, and a dozen neighboring ranchers who had come to respect the quiet strength of Elijah Walker and the determined spirit of his bride. The small garden behind the cabin had flourished under Anna's care, providing a bounty of vegetables that filled their root cellar for the coming winter. Inside, the cabin had transformed as well, curtains at the windows, colorful quilts on the beds, and fresh flowers on the table whenever the season allowed. Even Thomas remarked that the ranch felt more like a proper home than it ever had before. As they stood beneath an archway decorated with autumn wildflowers, exchanging vows before the traveling minister from Willow Creek, Anna felt the final pieces of her heart healing, not erasing the past, but building upon it, creating something new and stronger from all she had experienced. "I promise to remind you every day that you're not alone," Elijah whispered as he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, a new ring to symbolize their new beginning. "Not in joy or sorrow, in plenty or want, for all the days were granted together." "And I promise the same," Anna replied, her voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. "From wagon wrecks to whatever adventures await us, I choose to face them by your side." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the small gathering erupted in cheers that scattered a nearby flock of meadowlarks into the clear blue Colorado sky, a fitting symbol, Anna thought, of how love could take flight when given the freedom and courage to do so. That evening, after the guests had departed and the ranch had settled into peaceful quiet, Anna and Elijah stood on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast expanse above their home. "Any regrets?" Elijah asked, his arm around her waist, her head resting against his shoulder. Anna considered the question, thinking of the long journey that had brought her to this moment, the grief and loss, the unexpected rescue, the gradual awakening to new possibilities that had transformed her life in ways she could never have imagined. "Not one," she answered truthfully. "Every step, even the painful ones, led me here. To you, to us." His kiss held the promise of all the years stretching before them, years that would bring joys and sorrows, challenges and triumphs, but never again the crushing solitude that had once threatened to consume them both. From the wreckage of their separate pasts, they had built something beautiful and enduring, a love as vast and promising as the western landscape that had brought them together. In the years that followed, Clearwater Ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. The garden expanded to include apple trees and berry bushes. The library grew as Elijah ordered books from Denver and even San Francisco. The cabin itself gained additional rooms as their family expanded, first with the birth of their daughter Elizabeth Margaret in 1878, followed by twins Samuel and James 2 years later. Thomas Harper remained with them, eventually courting and marrying the schoolteacher from Willow Creek, building a small house of his own on Clearwater land. The community around them grew as the territory progressed toward statehood, bringing new neighbors and opportunities. Through it all, Anna and Elijah faced each challenge together, their partnership deepening with each passing season. On quiet evenings, they would sometimes reminisce about their unlikely beginning, a desperate flight, a wagon wreck, and 7 simple words that had changed everything. "You're not alone anymore," and they never were again.